Hey everybody, my name is Nathan Cox. For those of you who don't know me, I founded the state chapter of Virginia Cop Block. Guess back in 2000 and maybe 11, something like that. Anyway, I've been wanting to make a video. I've had a number of people ask me questions, including the media, as far as this growing problem of violent law enforcement officers, and if um, pointing more cameras at them will help mitigate the, the issue of police brutality and police misconduct. When the local news came out at my house to interview me about that last month, was it last month or the month before last? Of course, they only used a couple of brief segments in the package that they put on TV, and and they didn't really encapsulate everything that I said. So I had a friend of mine ask me the other day. Apparently, there's some movement. I don't even know if it's a group now that describe themselves as Black Lives Matter. And again, I'm a little naive to that. I don't know if it's a group or if it's just a kind of a decentralized movement, kind of like Cop Block or what. But um, apparently there was some press release, they were being interviewed by uh, Democracy Now, and they were saying how they thought it would be a good idea to notify the police that they were filming. And the thought process apparently was, or the logic behind it was, well, if the police know that they are being filmed, maybe that will curb their bad behavior, right? And it kind of makes sense. But it doesn't necessarily solve or fix the problem. I think that depending on the cop, some cops might not participate in bad behavior if they know that a camera is pointing at them, and I think some will, and some have, and I'll go into that here in a minute. And I think there's going to be three things that happen. There, as far as I can think of, there's going to be cops will not do bad behavior if they see cameras pointing at them. B, they'll get pissed off if the camera's pointing at them. They'll either arrest the person or break the camera or take the camera. Or C, they'll do it anyway. Okay. There has been, and so and one of the questions the media asked me was, and this was regarding a bill that some Virginia lawmaker had introduced about um, putting or mandating that all Virginia LEOs, law enforcement officers, wear body cams, right? They asked me, did I support the bill? And I actually told them that I did and I did not support the bill. The reasoning that I did not support the bill is because this particular gentleman wanted the funding for all the body cams to come from the federal government. And I thought that was a terrible idea. The federal government's already, $15 trillion in debt. And Virginia doesn't need to add to that. I said that I would support it if maybe they reprioritize their budgets, and instead of asking for stuff like tanks and whatever, or pay increases or whatever, I'm sure there's some way that they can skim down their giant budgets to fill in 20 to 50,000 or however much it's going to take to get body cameras on these officers. Um, I did support it because I think transparency is important. I think transparency leads to accountability. And I think cameras are an objective reference to any situation going on and will help rightly divide the truth of the matter. And it'll help protect the cop from perhaps people lying. And it'll also help hopefully protect people that are encountered with the police. So let me see here. But I don't think cameras are like a silver bullet type of fix. I told the media that I think a much better solution would be independent internal instead of having internal investigations, having independent investigations that have absolutely no conflict of interest, right? Right now we have if a cop does something bad, his buddies in his own department investigate him. That's a farce. It's theatrical nonsense. The large majority of the time, they come back saying our officer has been cleared of all wrongdoing, even in the case of a homicide. And we leaders, a big characteristic that a leader needs to have is being above or beyond reproach. You shouldn't have any room that somebody can point the finger and say, hey, you did something wrong, or you could be doing something wrong. And leaders within the police department and leaders within the local government ought to recognize and understand that it's only logical and reasonable to have people that don't have ties or affiliations to these police employees that aren't investigating these people, right? It could be, I'm sure it could be set up a number of different ways, whether it's similar to like the way a jury selection is, or it could be a fixed panel for every 6 months. It's rotated in and out by citizens. It doesn't matter, but it shouldn't be people who are tied to law enforcement. Even a family of law enforcement, it should completely rule out any conflict of interest. That is the better way. I think that if cops know that their friends aren't going to investigate them, then I think they'll really think far more harder if those things change, rather than if cameras are pointing at them. Because when I was interviewed for about that Virginia bill, just a week before that interview, there was a New Mexico cop who was wearing a body camera who shot a guy who was at least 30 feet or more away, who was running, shot a guy in the back. It was a traffic stop. The guy bolted. The guy was at least 30 feet away. The cop was wearing a body cam, and he still shot the guy in the back. I can't remember if the guy got killed or not, but there's plenty of videos on YouTube of cops either getting aggressive and arresting people filming them or breaking cameras. And there's still videos out there of cops involved in bad behavior, brutality, or misconduct, even when even their own cameras are pointed at them. And they ought to know that people can FOIA their dashboard cameras. Although I think that for the Freedom of Information Act request, I think there's a conflict of interest in that. I've put in a number of Freedom of Information Act requests over the last 12 months, and I know for a fact that I didn't get information that I knew was there. And I'm not going to go into that, but the problem is, we're asking these people that are supposed to have integrity, but unfortunately that has really come into question, to turn over documents that we're requesting. And if these documents are incriminating, can we really trust that when they find the document that we're looking for and they see how damaging it's going to be, can we really trust that they're going to turn it over? That's a whole other topic in and of itself. But so as far going back to my friend's question about the Black Lives Matter, what do you think about the idea of notifying the police? I think it's got its pros and cons. Well, first of all, here in Virginia, we have a one-party consent law, so you do not have to tell anybody, whether they're a public servant like the police or a private citizen, that you're recording them. When you're out in the public, you have no reasonable expectation of privacy, so you can be recorded. When you're in a conversation, it doesn't matter if you are aware. If you're in a conversation with me, it doesn't matter if you're aware that I'm recording you or not. It's one-party consent. However, if you and I are having a conversation and somebody else, without our knowledge, is recording the conversation, or perhaps even without one of our knowledge, then that would be quote unquote illegal here in Virginia. But besides that, I think there are pros and cons. I think that letting the police know might curb their behavior, might get them in check pretty quick, and settle maybe a potential aggressive situation down. But I think there's some situations that concealing the camera would be beneficial. Just like concealing a firearm would be beneficial rather than open carrying a firearm. I think that goes both ways depending on the environment and the location and whatnot that you're in, the situation that you're in. But so that's pretty much what I got. I hope my thoughts, help your thoughts out. Um, Unfortunately, we're dealing with a backward system, an upside down system from law enforcement all the way up to the judicial system. We have the highest incarceration rate in the world, and they continue to overcriminalize really freedom in general. And I unfortunately I don't see it turning around anytime soon. So we shall see. But anyway, I appreciate all of you who are involved in the cause for freedom and for liberty and for nonviolence and for personal responsibility, because all cop block is this idea that there shouldn't be double standards, that badges don't grant extra rights. Having double standards is not logical and not reasonable to begin with. So that makes sense. And this idea that you shouldn't be aggressed against. Violence, it shouldn't be acceptable in a free society, and we're supposed to be living in a free society. So anyway, that's all I got to say. And I will be in touch.